we're going to look at this from the orc point of view, right? So most of us are aware of this, but now it's time to get our squig juices flowing and actually understand it through an orc lens on how it's going to affect us. Even though, like we said, we don't know the exceptions, we don't know everybody else's. No need to think about them right now. Let's just look at how it's going to affect us and what we're doing, what we're used to. I don't think too much of this is negative for us. I think it's kind of in the middle, and it's pretty exciting. So if you read any of this and we're talking about you hear me talking about it, live chat, you go ahead and respond, put your thoughts in on there. It might be something worth mentioning, so don't be worried. Or if I say something wrong, sometimes we get tongue twisted up here live. So general game changes, right? So persistent battle shock. Shock attack gun. No, I'm joking. Shock attack gun might actually have a place in that way where now it's worth making them roll because it doesn't automatically go away. But the point here is now no longer battle shock, doesn't expire. The unit has to keep taking it. So even at the start of the turn, it's not there. That's good for very limited units that we have, and we don't know which ones are changing, like the Werboy and the Codex. And it does give a little bit of stuff to like Cult of Speed, where they have an actual strat that can make you take a battle shock, and that would be more impactful at -1. But for the most part, this is mostly negative on us orc players because we don't have necessarily the best leadership all the time, which means if now you're making us take it all the time consistently and it doesn't just go away. For our favorite way to play is let me just stand on the objectives and I'll primary you until I die sometimes as orc players. That's not as good for us either. So I don't hate it. We don't know the rules we're going to get. They maybe can ignore this or benefit from it or make people take it, but it's an interesting change to the rule nonetheless that I think is good for the game as a whole, right? But something I do like is Overwatch nerf. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah. Okay, so Overwatch is now restricted to the end of the opponent's movement phase and is limited to 24. It was always limited to 24 inches. Hits on sixes, but can't be re-rolled. Now, that's pretty sweet. Now it's end of the movement, so that's good for us as well because like we like our transports, we like moving them about them, better for staging in some cases. And it's not in the maybe not being in the charge phase is kind of redundant anyways in that way. But what's really interesting is cannot be Overwatch. Now your Land Raider Redeemers can still be obviously very impactful, but other than that, making people hit on sixes is fantastic because we all know that that was a bit maybe overly relied on certain units. Now, pour one out for my Luda gets on the Dread Mob. Pour one out for the Tactical Brigade gets with the Demet Captain. Or the right, I understand that there you guys were enjoying the Overwatch, so I do think that's awesome. Then we have those, and I've appreciated those rules. But nonetheless, as a whole, for 40K, I think it's more healthy to limit all of these overwatching these re-rolling kind of things, right? So I think that's pretty important. And yeah, then we also have Tank Shot. This unit can now be used on both vehicles and monsters. And also they're saying Tank Shock causes damage on if you roll on ones. So I have to double check that, but I think that is actually a rule, and I forgot about that. Fantastic. So that's going to be good for people. It means you can Tank Shock with unusual units as well. As for the orcs, that means we can Tank Shock hypothetically with our beast bosses on Squigosaurs. So that's going to be kind of cool because they're a little underwhelming in damage sometimes, and they do actually like in giving some more mortal wounds impacts to that as well, to like their ideal targets because they like to go for vehicles hypothetically. So I like that. So pretty cool on the orc end that we have a little bit more units that can do that. Yeah, so I'm pretty excited. And that means we can do it with our kill rigs again, right? Because our kill rigs got changed to monsters. So kill rigs, baby, got your tank shocks. I mean, sorry, it's not called tank shock anymore. Yeah, it's called, I forgot, it's called rolling stampede, or what was it called? Yeah, but yeah, we'll find it. It's something like I hit you, right? So that's cool. Stratagem limit units are limited to being targeted to only one unit stratagem per phase. That's great for like if someone popped armor contempt and smoke, and you're like, oh, my tank buster's just doing nothing now, right? So that's cool that they don't have that. It does suck for us though in the way of people currently would use fight on death, right? Orcs are never beaten, and then they would use unbridled carnage because that is the same phase. So for the ways that it's not in the same phase, okay, but in this one it is. So it's like, oh man, like that does kind of suck for our favorite detachment, as in Warhorde. For other detachments that are maybe like the Hunt, where they're being able to advance and charge, their advance and charge part is in the charge phase, not in like the command phase or the movement phase, right? So let's go. We're calling the strat I hate you for now. All right, cool. Huh? Oh, it's called Crushing Impact. So I hate you for now. I hate you is also a good one, I guess. So Tank Shock is called Crushing Impact. So stratagem limits. It's for some of our detachments that would suck because we like that doubling down on it. But as a whole, I think it's more healthy for the game, and I think it's going to help with all the new detachments we're going to see, where it's like stuff that GW might have not foreseen and been able to test, or they're just lazy to test, whatever. Where they're not going to be overlap a bunch of crazy stratagems because you're going to get stratagems from both detachments. So they're going to try to limit that craziness that may be on the shooting phase or the fight phase. Makes sense, right? Mobile keywords. The universal keyword allows you to move through terrain more easily. So we're gonna see what gets that. I don't know that for a fact, but I definitely think it's worth it. So it'll be nice and clear that we understand that. Now, for list building army structure, like we've already been talking about, but we can make it more clear right now. If you're an orc player and you want me to make it simple for you as I can, because that's the goal here, right? Just chilling, you're painting. We're gonna make it clear. And also, what's making it clear is the bad dog for a $30 super chat. We're gonna get that on the big getting box, boy, with them teeth. That's what I'm talking about. So thank you very much. It's very, very generous of you, and it means a lot for the Great Wall and why we, helps us do what we do. So uh thank you for that, and why we can actually do what we do, because the Armageddon boxes, we getting it directly to that. You get, so if you see me pumping it out, you're gonna know it came from the guys like the Bad Dog and all the other super chats earlier. But why to you, sir? Why to you? Because you're a newer git, and this is an awesome time to be a green skin. Because I think this, what we're about to go over with the list building and army structure too, is why I am also assuming, based off what we've heard and some people have said on the leaks and we've seen online, and like Arcane asked earlier, the detachment digitally changed. I think because it has to go with this forced disposition part of the game that we're going to look at. So the game's going to also be loaded in some ways of what you remember what's happening, but also kind of similar with I'm doing that same thing all the time. So you're going to have a good time, the bad dog, and thank you for that. So like we were saying, the detachment points. Army's now a maximum of 3. I think the most normal ones I said are going to be basically like Warhorde and such. And then our next favorite one's Dreadmob. Yeah. Right now, I'm pumped. I want to see what happens to Dreadmob. Yeah, Dreadmob is also going to suffer from the 2 stratagem thing too. Just saying. Let's talk about that right now. Because normally I want to do like reroll hits, +1 hit, right? Everything. So now we're not be able to do that, especially with another detachment attached to it. But nonetheless, um, with your forced disposition. So now this is what I'm talking about, why I think strongly that the digital ones are going to change to 1 to interact more smoothly with the forced disposition that impacts the mission you play. So your detachment, let's say, I'm just going to just say that this is how it's going to look, that they're going to tell you your detachment, and they're going to put like a little symbol by it for what force or mission you would likely to do. Disposition is just another rule for preference, essentially, right? So you're saying, what would I prefer to do here based off this detachment? So the detachment's going to tell you this detachment wants to do this mission. So if you pick 2 detachments that want to do this mission type, well, then you know that's the one you're most likely going to do, obviously. But that's also why they had to simplify the digital ones, because they have to be able to say, well, this is clearly what you do, this is clearly what you do, and we're going to make you complement the codex, because the codex is what people paid for and more set in stone and what everybody universally owns and has access to. So because of that is why I'm so certain that they're going to simplify the digital rules, make them 1 point, so that when you're picking your mission, it's way more linear for everybody in that way. Because, huh? Yes, and that too, right? So the mission, because the Big Mac's right over here, guys. So when we get another mic cable, he can jump down over here too. So he can jump in the chat too. But he was also bringing up, of course, that the support detachment, right? So you know how we have the support characters being released, that there's a leader character and then there's a support character. The same thing for your detachments, kind of, where there's going to be support detachments, which is what I think is going to happen to a lot of the digital ones. So that's the simplest, most easy way for a company like GW, with the amount of detachments there are, rules are, to simplify this. Make those all chill, make them complement the current hard book rules. Those are support ones. These are the backbone ones. Run it out. And I think that's really a really good take. So I think that's what's going to happen there with force disposition. So most people are really focused on like, well, I want to do this because I want this cool rule to kill you and all this. Let's see what the force disposition tells you to do, right? And then we'll be able to even more accurately. We can assume, but we'll be more accurately know. The enhancements and upgrades, players are going to be up to 4 for your 2,000 points, and you upgrade also allows to be applied to non-character units like a repulsor, like a big unit of cans. Um, and so right here, wall tactics, they confirmed in one of the interviews that you lock. Oh, let me put it up here. They confirmed in one of the interviews that you lock your disposition at army creation, even if you have two options. Locked you in your army disposition. Yeah. Okay. So you pick it up as a part of your list. Oh, that was what they said, right? Yeah. Okay. Thanks for reminding me of that, because that was what they said in a verbal. Man, you have to catch every video. Yes, sir. There's a lot of rules that are changing, but it's good. So you lock in your disposition even if you have the two options. So that's good for that. We know when we're building out. Still, nonetheless, it's very similar pattern to what we're saying, that you're picking the rules, you have your disposition set, but that's why they're going to make all the digital ones simple in that way, because they're going to be very clearly just supportive, especially if you're already picking and locking your position at the start of your list creation. Yes, they did say that. I don't know how I forgot that. But then that means, boom, there we go. Then they have to be support roles in that way to simplify it also. But thank you very much for saying that. 11th edition. Okay, so cool. What were we saying here? Oh, and the units that the enhancements and upgrades can go on. So, like a big 6-man unit of killer can might actually be able to get an enhancement now. Cool. They're super slow. They need help in that kind of way. I'd be pumped for that. Getting up to 4 is very, very interesting. How crazy is the game going to get? Right. So it's like, how crazy is it going to get in that way? But I'm excited because, like a unit of Squig Hog boys, I think GW is a little hard headed and not going to drop them in points like we want them to. Maybe they will, because the new combat range we're going to talk about in a minute. But something like a Squighog Boy unit where you don't always want to pay for the Beast Boss on Squigosaur or the Mazrock Scrag Bag, well, then you might just be able to upgrade a big brick of Beast Snagger Boys. So, I mean, Squighog Boys. So I'm pretty pumped about that as well. Um, and yes, someone I already said earlier, someone already owns 21 War Bikers. Already he's ready to go. Um, and so, and I have 18. I think he already has more than 21. He was getting more. So yes, someone is definitely gonna own 36 in real life, and they're gonna ruin someone's life. So yeah, pretty sick on that. Characters splitting into support and leaders, like I said, makes it more obvious for what people want to do. And I think that helps you too when you're building out your army, as you're getting into the orcs as a faction as a whole. You're like, okay, these are my support guys. Ooh, I need a couple more leader guys. Boom, boom, boom. Make it going on. I think the big boss is going to be really good for like kit bashing. Mission and scoring revamping. So asymmetric scoring, different primaries against each other, so they can be contradictory to each other. Orcs, maybe let's say Green Tide. I want to run take and hold. Then you're playing against GSC, and they're like, "Dang, I can't fight you on the mid table like that. We're gonna play more of the trap kind of game." All right, cool. That's nice to see. That's the example GW also gave. That's gonna be interesting for me as an orc player, because typically we already do like to play our mission of, I'm just going to play the mid table, beat out the points, beat you up. But this might actually favor guys that, like you said earlier, where we got the super chatter that did 18 commission mega knobs. I mean, now your mega knob unit doesn't have to try to play the same game the same way Green Tide does, to make it simple. So that's pretty sick in that way. And that means something that's in the middle like maybe the hunt can do both. So I'm can have more diverse play in that way once it gets the kind of support detachment then they get rewritten what they're going to look like because the hunt's probably going to be the main one. Pick a cool support one for the hunt, put it alongside there, force disposition to hunt better at multiple. Boom, we get it done. It doesn't have to play the same way as Bully Boys or Green Tide. That'd be kind of cool in that way. Objective terrain, physical objective markers are replaced by terrain pieces, right? So it's like a rectangle. And that means people can see you. Honestly, that's a big deal. So as much as people are poo-pooing, oh man, this is really benefiting the combat armies. That's not fair, right? You guys are going to be able to shoot people directly into terrain pieces, or people could just drive right up at you or within 10 inches of you and still blow you away. So orcs actually don't actually like that, if people don't realize it. So as much as I'm excited about orcs, the fact that we're going to just have to stand in the open, well, one, we kind of already like to do that, but that's a certain play style, right? You don't necessarily want your Meganoms to be just standing there in the open with one OC and then getting bombed on by everybody shooting and fighting. So it's like, okay, the mission might not tell them they have to do that, but people still have to take the objectives. There's still going to be secondaries that you have to do that, like we're talking about right here, where tactical secondaries are still going to have to draw them, and then you're going to be able to hold on to them. So you're going to have reason to be on objectives and in terrain, anyways, when you start loading up these secondaries. So I think the shooting armies are overreacting, I would say a little bit, because of this rule of, unless people are playing, which no one's going to play this way, like a big half of a box as a terrain piece is a ruin to hide someone completely from one side. I don't think shooting armies have to worry that hard. They're going to be able to get a line of sight to most units, but it does increase the value of independently durable models. Maybe they're on objectives, right? So yeah, and then like with the secondaries, no longer have to discard them immediately. You can kind of hold on to them, and then you score them at your own will. So I'm pretty excited about that too, because there's a lot of time where you're like, ooh, can't necessarily do that right now, or oops, I don't want to do that. To make it, you're forcing my hand to wall right now just to score these 8 points. So that's a big deal. So yeah, I'm good things about the scoring mission revamps. I think orcs, nonetheless, we always kind of implement our own game plan, right? Our mission, we make our rule. This is what I want to do to you. This is where I want to have our fight. These are my killing units. These are my scoring units. These are my holding OBJ units. Mixture of both sometimes. That's very clear. And some factions are more decision heavy on what the opponent's trying to do and being creative. That does, we already have to keep track what we're going to be trying to do for our disposition, our opponent's disposition, more secondaries, holding the secondaries, possibly even if you're really high level, paying attention to your opponent's secondaries. You can try to deny them as well. So there's a lot more information for scoring that can be happening as well, even though people were upset that it's going to be kind of redundant in some ways. Oh, I'm playing my friend's custodes. I know he plays this. Oh, the same mission. Yeah, these missions are going to be quite loaded though, right? And you're going to have different layouts when you do the same mission at times. So and then for right now is a good time to break up to McFat Son with a $5 super chat. Whoa, let's go. Thank you very much for that. You good? I appreciate the support. Very generous. He says, new mech model is perfect warlord for my dread mob. But the greatest irony is that I'm most excited at using the Marines to start my White Scars army. No, I'm joking. I got my Imperial Fist army. I think I wouldn't be mad. Luckily, I'm splitting possibly a box with someone if I can, if I like I get a second one and such. So it's like I would like some for my Imperial Fist, I guess. But if we're being 100 right here, I haven't even finished. I haven't even put together all the boxes, the models from the Tyranid box set that I got, right? The start of this edition. So it's like I didn't even put together all the guys, like the Pyro dudes. But I would be excited to have those kind of models in the in my Imperial Fist army. And you for White Scars, I'm sure you want the jetpacks, you want the speeder. I'm interested, even though it sounds silly as the heavy bolter guys, but I'm playing with Imperial Fist, so who cares? As for the Dread Mob, for the Warlord, right? That guy's gonna be able to get enhancements. That new mech model, that's gonna be pretty awesome in Dread Mob as well. Right? I'd like to okay, let him ignore cover. Yeah, in the Dread Mob army, give him the enhancements to ignore cover. That's what I'd like to see to make this Gatling better. So he is pretty sick. I'm as someone who already has a lot of everything and talking to gets like Mark Perry, right? It's like he we're actually still excited about getting these models, even the ones that we already have, and we're either just gonna blend them into our units or just make independent units. And then it'd be easy to track to be like, all right, that new Orc Boy model unit mob of 20 gets, they have the enhancement. And then I still have my other 5 bricks of 20. It's like, all right, cool, right? So I'm still gonna find a way to make them run, and I'm excited you are too. Thank you very much for that super chat. Very generous of you. But in like Super Gets say, till we see the games, it's all fun speculation, and that's what we're doing here, having a good time. Yeah, you do have to know because we do know at least some of the basic rules. That's what we're talking about now. But it's still speculation because we don't know who's going to ignore or have counters to these moves or be the exception to these rules, etc. We don't know how that's written yet, and we might even have some exception to these rules. So we'll see. So, revised shooting mechanics. Cover no longer provides +1, -1 the ballistic skill to the attacker. Of course, this is the stop the AP thing, but this upsets orc players to a degree because, well, not everybody is going to make us hit on sixes. As I said earlier, we don't know what detachments are going to possibly ignore that benefit, and send we to counter it, and we'll actually be able to still shoot our guns because you'll be able to get assault, and not all the orc boys have to shoot us on them. Yeah, even though I feel like that's the only thing I can think about. Even though, like sometimes when I know there's other units, like my flash gets, for example, I don't want them to suck and not be able to shoot. But I'm like, man, I've been so many editions that I wanted to shoot shooter boys and had a reason to use them, and now they actually have the models with them and they have a reason. So I'm pumped about it, and I do look forward to some of the digital rules if they do get rewritten to complement that they help deal with that ballistic skill exception. We also don't know if data sheet rules might be an exception to that as well, right? So, what I really want to see though is burners of all types of scorches, right? So burner boys and the scorches on the death dreads, I want them to get better. I think that's fair to say, especially for orcs, if that's going to be the case. Then we have hidden status. Infantry B swarms can get hidden, so if they don't shoot, they're granted 15-inch. Lone operative, kind of like a lone operative, where they can't be targeted unless they shoot and they can be shot. People are like, well, then this is no fair to staging. I don't like that after you're close. Well, that's good because good. We don't know the exceptions, of course, right? Some people are already saying they can extend it by 3 inches. They have a rule that makes it so they can see you from 3 inches further. Like we already know, people will have exceptions to these rules, so there'll be limitations. But it does put stuff into perspective of, you know, a detachment we're going to talk about a little later, but like Green Tide, where okay, you move in to take that shots off a Green Tide unit, likely not picking it all up, and then now even that one unit acts as a lily pad to hit and then move on to the rest of the army and just get positioning. So it does kind of force those interactions from some armies that on some missions would be like, yeah, I'll just stand in my corner of the field, and then as soon as you come out, I'll super punish you. Right. So it's a good rule, but it's not overwhelming because if the enemy full commits, they can then fully pick you up if you put too many units in objectives also. Like I sorry, in terrain pieces, because 15 inches is still like you're able to get within close enough. Plunging fire, super excited about that one for the orcs. Only because I actually want something like a Luda to be able to do something in that case. Shock attack gun, maybe even a tank buster. And the Luda actually has the 48-inch range, but then it's like, well, you can't see me within that. That's okay. Because the point is you can leave Ludas inside of a building, right? So you can leave Ludas on a terrain piece with a ballistic skill, not shooting. And then when someone moves into that range, then you're like, all right, I get the benefit from this and shoot at them. And if we have heavy, which we have heavy down there, which gains +1 to hit if they move less than 3 inches and did not arrive from reserves. So then you can get +1 to hit from heavy, and then you also get plus ballistic fire +1, right? So Ludas, and we don't know if they get a rule because why they're going to give them rerolls on objective still. Maybe they'll still have the same rule, right? Maybe you can't do it for Overwatch, but we don't know if a detachment rule will somehow allow Ludas to shoot from further away, still be safe on top of a terrain piece, and then now you actually have some over firepower from plunging fire and heavy support weapon fire, and that would be pretty awesome. Again, Flash Gets, for example, would be a unit that they have heavy on their weapons. They disembark, They didn't move more. They moved less than 3 inches. A disembark isn't considered a move currently. It's a disembarking. So flash skates might be able to move and then still get +1 to that. So then they're not always hitting on sixes. So we already know that there are ways that we're not going to always be hitting on sixes in that case. And we don't know what exceptions to these rules we're going to have also. So I'm not as negative about it. And I think big shooters should have heavy. That's just me, right? Like big shooters aren't that good anyways. Just throw all the keywords on them, right? What is that, like a heavy stubber? Anything else? Anything I missed there? But our get Dread Clown with another $5 super chat. Whoa, there we gonna get them teeth up, boy. I'm gonna be able to get a banner knob. One gloom, one positive super chat with a return to second edition aesthetic is the this bike this edition. All the bikers have needed love for 10 years. So you think that the aesthetics changed back to second edition? Is it because the horns and because how it's more front loaded and they look a little bit more slimmed down? You know what they remind me of? Oh man, I know, I know. Okay, remember, orcs are supposed to be kind of like a comedic version of from what I understand, like a comedic Cockney accent of some kind of subculture in British society or the UK, right? And with that being said, those bikers kind of remind me of like a cafe racer. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm talking about with the cafe racer bike. If you guys don't know, they're like where they took all of the kind of like side panels off the bikers to make them smaller and slimmer because of the roads and everything like that. That's how this front one kind of looks to me, where the bike, the orc on it was like, I want to take all of the bits off of it, and then I want to go faster. So instead of putting more armor, I'm making him bulky, having a grot on his back. He's like, no, no, no. I just want the horns. He's a small down, slim down. I'm gonna go right into you. So I think that's pretty sick. Mm, yes. Okay. So then, yeah. So I think that's one pretty awesome. And the bikers have needed love. Yes, they do, because they look kind of old. How they are right now, and kind of symmetrical. I won't lie. I've broken a lot of the biker weapons. Currently. And I'm into the horns a lot. Let's see. Okay. And then yeah, so I'm pretty excited about that. I go back to where I was, I think, was I the revised shooting? Yeah. Uh Oh yeah, not disembarking from a transport. Thank you. Yes, that is true with that one. Still applies if they're staged up and they can move three and still shoot. They still have heavy, so maybe they'll be better up as well. Because technically, coming out of disembarkation is not set up on the battlefield. But the Ludas, like I was talking about, still come in from that, and we still have our big walkers that might possibly have heavy on some of their weapons. So that's pretty cool still in that case. But thank you for clearing that up. True, not coming out of the transport. Um, and yeah, they did an update. So thank you very much for that, Clown. I appreciate you very much, Dread Clown, for that. Let's see. Anything I'm missing from the super chats if we're moving on? All right, cool. No. All right. So then we have, I think we got everything there too. All right, cool. So then we go to the melee and charge phase changes. Now these are pretty big, pretty interesting. And I think that for the most part, this is another thing that I think shooting players are overlooking, that combat does have more benefits now and how it can be used. It makes more sense, but it's also not as reliable because now you need a little bit more difficult charges. So let's see. We have expanded engagement range. So this is another one when I was alluding to earlier when I said the Squig Hog Boys, for example. So engagement range has been increased to 2 inches, making it much easier to tag multiple units, but it also makes it harder for, if you have a big base model like a Thunderwolf cavalry unit, right? That guy. Now there are exceptions. People are like, well, those are gonna have strats. They can make it 3 inches. I understand all that. I'm just saying though, it does make these units that are already paying for a pivot, which I guess Thunderbolts aren't, but Squig Hug Boys are, which is what we're talking about, then they already have to make up for that distance, and then also they have to make kind of gaps or spaces for the tip of the other squig to be able to get there, instead of just, oh, I'm just gonna tag the back of my knob base and be in combat, because that knob base is huge, right? I don't have my knob base on here, but I should measure it. But the squig knob base is actually really big, so that does become a detriment to him. And then, as we were saying, for like Mazrog, Beast Boss on Squigosaur, I'm not even more inclined with, if they're not going to have good rules, to bring those characters if they're slowing me down and making it harder for everybody to get into combat. So I think that's pretty interesting in that way. And they're really trying to get around some of the shenanigans people were pulling off. This also, but that's just engagement range, right? So now we're talking about the charge phase, though. No requirement to base to base. Players no longer have to base them and touch the opponent's base to be considered in combat. Just be within 2 inches. And when you roll your charge, right now you're rounding up. So if it, or not pretty much rounding up. So if it was a 7.2 and combat range, getting your charge range to get within combat was 1 inch, you would have to round up. Sorry, you could round down before, because you're like, well, combat range, I can just get within 1 inch. Now it's, when you declare the charge, you have to round up so that you can actually make that not 1 inch range, but actually get close enough to be within the base range, right? So that's like a base to base. So that's pretty awesome in the way that it's more, makes more sense and is more linear, but it is more difficult, because now you're like, oh, what used to be a 7 is now an 8 inch charge, for example, right? So and like we said with the charge rolls, this is great for orcs and our mobs. We don't have to desperately choose the furthest target, but if we roll a big charge, your green tides are going to look crazy, because you're going to be like, well, actually, I can reach all of this stuff, even though I was going to be happy just to go for what's right in front of me. So that's pretty crazy. I'm getting a lot of good vibes from these rules, honestly, from hordes. Just because I've kind of been saying that already, but these rules, I've been thinking for orcs, like, we appreciate these kind of changes. As for just basic, elite combat armies, if you're like a 3-man unit of 8 bound, it's not the same in that way. But yeah, I like that. Now, no more, oh, I come out to fight and I have to roll a chance to fight, even, right? I have to roll before I even get a chance to get into a fight. Then we have mega heroic intervention. So now they have two types of heroic intervention, which is an interesting change, where you can choose to do the one CP1, or you can choose to do the 2 CP1. For the 1 CP1, you can charge anything within 12 inches that made a charge move. So that's huge, to be able to be like, oh, I'm gonna just line up my dude and over there, let's go, and they just pull their own charge off. But from what we understand, right, because if we talked about the CP changes to strats overlapping on each other, you can't declare the heroic and then re-roll the charge unless you already have built-in rerolls, right? So all of those rules they give you built-in rerolls also are way more beneficial now, way more. Because before, you're like, well, if I really needed a reroll, I could use a CP reroll, and I'll just ignore that rule, and I have no reason to take that enhancement or that buff or that detachment buff. In this case, I have a lot of reasons, right? Not just your own offense, but your counter offensives in this way of, I'm going to do heroic. So that's sick. And then 2 CP, you can charge anything within 6 inches, regardless of where they charge. Now, for orcs, this one I was like, not gonna lie, I like to stand right in front of you, right? So, like, with my grots, my commandos, especially commandos, moving 6 inches, standing 1 inch or 1.1 inches away from you, and being like, can't touch this, right? That was really annoying for your opponents, especially when they have these really super killy kind of units that are super fast, and everybody in 40K gets so many buffs. One of my favorite things was to just simply move block people. That is not going to be the case for orcs anymore, in the same way. Yeah, it has to be more. But it still have to be further, because now if it's 6, they can charge me if I just stand right in front of them. I'm saying so. That means they're still gonna be able to move up the field and not get in the way. What was the other thing I was thinking? I was thinking of something else. Oh, and they change. I think we're gonna talk about the fight order. Fight first. Yeah, we will in a second. Then we move to Overrun. This is a new site fight sequence. If a unit charges but has no targets left in engagement range, after the first pile in, it can fight, make a second pile-in type of move, which is called overrun, to get into a fight. They show a diagram for that. You know, a lot of the time as orcs, we already really kind of liked to use this combo in a way where it's just easier to get off now. Because before we would do something like um, a beast boss charges a rhino, and the Squig Hog Boy unit charges a rhino. The beast boss pops the rhino, and then the Squig Hog Boy unit piles in and hits it. But because they changed all of the pile-ins now, where now pile-in acts as its own phase, and the person whose its turn that is gets to do all their pile-ins at once. This makes up for the fact that, oh, now I can't do that shenanigan. So now the shenanigan is just more secured and you more likely to get it off. So that's actually a really good impact for us because we like doing that rule. Now, does that suck for our chucks? Yes, but our chucks typically issue was getting shot, you know, and then people getting shot after. It wasn't that we were just letting people run up to our trucks and then overrun us. Typically, we were overrunning other people's transports. So that's overall a beneficial move for us. So a lot of these rules are beneficial, but like standing in a terrain piece and getting shot isn't. So I think this is fair. We have cleave. Some people say it's a crappy rule because it's like, well, why would I want more attacks on my axe when I already, you know, I'm an orc unit and I already get a lot of attacks. I understand it. It could make precision more interesting because you just get more attacks in general and you're more likely to take out someone's main character that was leading it. It could be that you just, once you actually get hit from a mob, your main mob can go off and cleave a 10-man unit. Like if they were like, okay, I shot some of your boys away and I stabbed a couple away. Well, instead of your power claw now being like, I got 3 attacks. These stupid umes. Right now he's like, I got cleave. And he just until chops through like a whole unit of guardsmen with, you know, critical 5+, for example. You never know. And what other changes for big axes they're going to get. So I think cleave's not that bad as a rule, even though it's different for orcs in that way. You know, it could be a way that other orcs counter other horde armies, for example, especially if they don't have a cleave in the same way. And then we have the fight order. So the fight first, right? So what we're talking about here is they change fight first as well. That is, you know, if you have Lionel Johnson, the Judiciar, for example, stuff like that. Orcs do not have any fight first stuff. So we hated this rule. It was super frustrating. In this way, it's not as frustrating because now, even if he, you know, jumps into us and fights first, he gets the benefit of committing a charge, but we get to choose who fights first anyway. So you can punch him out if you have to. Right. So it's not the same kind of fight first. Now it just makes more sense where it's a more, it's not like, but I have fights first. Right. That's what it was before. It was like, what are you talking about? Right. Like, what the, it would confuse people that were new to 40K. In this way, it's like, all right, I have the same moves as you, but because it's your turn, you get to pick someone and then he'll get to fight. So I do like that, and but that also the new heroics make it so those kind of good units, like a Lionel who has an invul and stuff, might still take that risk. So that is something to be taken into consideration. We still don't know if we're going to get a fight first ever, but we don't right now. If you enjoyed the clip, check out the full video here. If you'd like to see more tactics, click here.
Let's get stuck in, lads!